Alrighty folks, got a spicy one for you today. You have tuned in to another Wumu transmission. Now, let's quickly just clarify this title. I admit it might seem a little clickbaity, but I say debunk. More to the point, it is offering a different lens which is scientifically verifiable, but also one which, once has been seen, cannot be unseen. Now, I covered this at length in the Serpent, Sinner, and Satan video, but I appreciate that my communication, coming out, oh yeah, this is the astro-theologian interpretation of the Bible, that's too much. So this one is going to be plain, simple, fast, for the layman, scientifically verifiable, quantifiably provable, and basically impossible to refute. With that said, if there are any religious scholars who choose to watch this and disagree and think they can out-reason these arguments or this science, please let me know. I'd be happy to have a discussion, a debate, or what have you. Right, now to start with, let's just understand the archetypes of the ages. Now, bear in mind, an age is around 2,160 years. So it takes the Earth 72 years to rotate 1 degree in the precession of equinoxes. That's why the Torah had 72 disciples. But without going too deep into that, we'll just break down the 3 main sects of religions and the archetypes associated with them. So Christianity obviously has dominated for the past 2,000, a little bit over years. Why? Because Jesus, the fisher of men, right? Look, you can see here the Pope, he wears a fish head on his mitre, on his hat, and Jesus is obviously symbolized by the Christian fish. You can see that down in the bottom right corner of that picture on your left there. That is because the sun was in the constellation of Pisces, the fish, for the past 2,000 years. It's archetypal. Now, prior to that, we had the Old Testament. We have the Torah. Well, that is why you see in the Jewish tradition, they wear the peo curls. You can see that down bottom center. That represents ram curls, ram horns. And they blow a literal ram horn, the shofar, on Holiest of Holies, right? Why did they do that? Because the sun was in the age of Aries, the ram, okay? Now, prior to that, you have the Hindu holy cow and the Apis bull of Egypt. Why do they symbolize, why do they revere this archetypal image? Because the sun was in the age of Taurus, the bull. This is all archetypal, depending on the age in which these scriptures were developed or written, right? Now, Passover, Easter, and the crucifixion. I've always wanted to do this. Now, right here, I have what is fairly simple to recognize, a 2-dimensional little diagram of Earth. Now, through the center horizontal line, you have the equator. Above that, the dotted line, the Tropic of Cancer. The one below that, the Tropic of Capricorn. You have your cardinal points there. Now, that sine wave that runs across these lines through the center, the blue line, that is why we are a sinner, because we are a sine wave, but we won't go too deep into that. That represents the sun's path over the earth each year, okay? And that is what all these scripture stories are telling us. The hero's journey is the sun's path over the earth. But, irrespective of that, you'll see here, this is the proper start of the solar year. We celebrate it Jan 1st, New Year's Day, but the truer New Year's Day would actually be here, which is the spring equinox. Now, we celebrate this as Passover in the Jewish tradition, or Easter in the Christian tradition. Why? Because the sun, the eastern star, which both Moses and Jesus represent, the eastern star passes over the equator to represent the birth of spring, the rebirth of nature again for the year, right? Up here, this represents the summer solstice, okay, the longest day of the year. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. This is what we'd recognize as the crucifixion. Now, as the sun falls below the equator, that is why autumn, from a northern hemispherical standpoint, is called fall, because the sun falls beneath the equator, I've got three little symbols there. Now, on the sun's path, that circle you see up the top, here, the sun is traveling through a constellation called the Corona Borealis. Now, what is that? It is a ring of stars. That is the crown of thorns, okay? Now, on this dead central line, the equilibrium, it is going through Libra. That is where we get the word equilibrium. It represents harmony, okay? Represents equality, equilibrium. Why? Because on the equator, it is a perfect 12-hour day, 12-hour night. Equal balance between sun and moon, the masculine and feminine, okay? So that would be the scales, symbolically, the judgment, if you will. Now, where does the sun travel after that? Hint, hint, to any of my Aussie listeners, you should know this, it's on our flag. The Southern Cross. All right, literally. So you have the crown of thorns, you have the judgment, the Libra, the equilibrium, and the sun falls onto the cross. Literally, that's what Jesus is representing in that story. It isn't historical fact. It is allegory, it's mythology, encoding deep esoteric scientific truths, right? That's what that is. Obviously, then you come down to the winter solstice. This is what would be referred to as hell, okay? So for those, hell, the concept of it was first really parroted after Dante's Inferno, right? Now, Inferno, in Latin, is the word inverno, which means winter, right? So that is hell. Hell is just winter. Anyway, interesting, right? Moving on. So this is all the same story being told through a different lens, right? So you have Jesus, and he has 12 apostles, right? The 12 zodiacs. The Last Supper, right? We spoke about the archetypal ages of religion. At the Last Supper, bear in mind, I haven't even read the Bible, and I know this. Jesus says to his followers, go to the man's house who bears water, right? Why is that Jesus, the Son's Last Supper? Because the Son is about to move into Aquarius, the water bearer, the man who bears water, right? It's archetypal, it's astrotheology, it's science, it's cosmology, it's astronomy, it's all these things, and a lot more, right? Now, the Vatican, it is literally built on top of Mithraic mystery school temples. What was the story of Mithra? Well, he was the sun god with 12 disciples, 12 apostles. It is the same story wrapped up in a different lens. As with all Roman, Greek, Egyptian mythology, Hindu, it's all the same story in a different package, It's beautiful storytelling to share scientific, esoteric insight, right? Now, the Father and the Virgin Mary. So who is Jesus' father? Well, that is the Son, okay? Now, the Virgin Mother, no, Jesus wasn't some alien baby birthed by some chick getting pregnant out of nowhere. No, the Virgin Mother is the Spirit, the archetypal Mother of Heaven, of Earth, who I've met, so I know this through lived experience. Speak to Chris Bledsoe. The lady, the divine feminine, Aphrodite, Venus, Isis, right? This is all the same Gaia, Mother Ayahuasca. This is all the same archetypal Mother of Heaven spirit that represents the earth, okay? And we've spoken about free energy principles and whatnot in the past. So Israel, that word is Isis, Ra, and El. Isis is Mother Earth. The Father is Ra, the sun god. And El is the creation of father and mother, right? Same way we have physical parents, mum and dad, we have metaphysical, non-physical, spiritual parents, the sun and the earth, okay? So El would be Jesus or Moses in this context. That is the creation of Isis and Ra. That's what that is, right? Now, we've all been kind of brainwashed. I mean, I never was a religious follower. Maybe that's why I'm able to see this from a more objective standpoint without cognitive bias. But you have to understand what role does the current iterations or interpretations of religion play? Well, through idol worship, that means worshipping something other to yourself. So that would be Jesus, right? If you're worshipping Jesus and not yourself, that is idol worship, right? Well, what that does is if you're not worshipping yourself, understanding you are experiencing yourself, you are the God, you are the unity consciousness, the source, you are nature experiencing yourself, well, you don't recognize your own power, And a powerful population is one that's impossible to control. So why do they do it? Well, it's a handy tool. All these, I've gone at length about this in previous videos. All these religious leaders know exactly everything that I'm telling you. It's no secret to them, but the story that they give you is by design. A cynical aspect to it as well. There's malicious intent because it's then easy to control. And what has religion served us? Divide and war. Really. Okay? And power to a select few. Because it's just a vehicle, they're all the same people wearing different hats. There's no separation between them, okay? Now, this will be a difficult one for many to swallow. Why? Because especially if you're more mature and you identify with your beliefs, I am a Christian military man and this, that, and the other. Well, that is what you identify with. So if what you identify with is demonstrably proven false, then what are you? Well, that's actually a good thing because the existential crisis is necessary. We must all trudge through hell before reaching the heavens. That isn't to say that there isn't merit in the scriptures you've been reading, but the interpretation and practice of them has been misunderstood. There's been a misconstruing there. Okay, so it isn't to say there's anything wrong with being Christian, Jewish. It's like there's all truth in all of these. They're all telling the same story, but they're being told to us in a way that takes us away from the true core message of the story, right? And the science behind it. I mean, there is so much more wisdom in these scriptures that we study than you could possibly imagine, right? I should probably read one day. Now, it's far easier to make a fool of someone than have them accept that they are the fool themselves. I was once there. My ego was such that there was probably nothing worse in the world than being proven wrong. I couldn't stand it, because it hurts you, You pride yourself on your intellect. But funnily enough, the more you know, don't know. The more you know, you don't know, So there is a question here that I posit. Do you choose to accept what is? And again, this is archetypal. These are powers beyond our control. The age of Aquarius, the water bearer, is now in. So cyclically, a new religion, a new spiritual practice, a new truth will emerge. That is why we're in the age of disclosure. That is why we're hearing about fucking aliens in Congress and all this stuff. Literally, so the apocalypse, which you find in the book of Revelations, means what? Means revelation. It means, disclosure. And we're in the age of disclosure because it's archetypal. It is a conscious influence. It's an energetic influence that is beyond our control. It just is. So that is the power of astrology. When you understand to learn the cycles, you never fight it, you just go with it. You go with the flow, okay? So this is happening, whether people choose to accept it, believe it, or not. And if you don't believe it, it's because you don't want to believe it. I mean, this is scientifically verifiable. So do you choose to live in truth? Maybe accept. Maybe you have been made a fool, but that's okay because we all have been. Or do you choose to just cling on to these dogmatic beliefs and die in ignorance? Well, everyone has a choice and I respect everyone's. But until then, woo-moo, woo-way.